Well, former Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul is at odds with many of the more mainstream Republicans.
If we're not the provocateurs, why would we use a military ship instead of a non-military ship? What's the purpose of that if it isn't to provoke?
Great to see you, as always, Congressman.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
You saw the speeches last night. Bill Clinton oversaw a strong economy during his presidency. This is what he argued last night in his speech. And he made the case that the GOP in the past 8 years has really run the economy into the ground, and that is why they don't deserve 4 more years. What did you think of his speech, specifically what he was saying about the economy?
Well, I think there's some truth to that, but I don't think he can claim all the credit for it. The Federal Reserve is really responsible for the booms and the busts. So the Federal Reserve pumped up the credit during his period in the 1990s, and there was a lot of capital gains taxes came in, and it helped the budget.
We have used military ships to provide assistance after the tsunami in Asia. We've used military planes to provide humanitarian assistance. So it's actually fairly standard procedure, not any kind of provocative act at all.
The situation is exactly the same whether it's the 90s or now. It's just that we go through these cycles, but the Federal Reserve causes these problems, and for him to claim great credit. But the Republicans come up short. They talk about balanced budgets and smaller government, and then we put them in power, and look at what happens. The deficits explode, and now they're on the short end. The economy turned down, but it wasn't the fact that just George Bush was in office. It was due to turn down because that's the consequence of what happens when you create an artificial bubble.
Do you think it's a valid argument, though, that a John McCain administration would be a 4-year extension of the Bush administration?
Sure, but I think that's what's going to happen with Obama, too. There's no difference. Their foreign policies are identical. They want more troops in Afghanistan. They want to send more support to Georgia to protect the oil line there. Support to Georgia to protect the oil line there.
It is perfectly normal to have relations with Georgia to deliver humanitarian assistance in a standard way.
Neither one says bring home the troops from Iraq from the bases. The bases are going to stay there. The embassy, as big as the Vatican, that's going to remain. So their foreign policies are exactly the same. They're both very, very aggressive with Iran. So I would say there's no difference.
And you were the one, of course, in the primaries and at the debates that the only Republican really opposed to Iraq, calling for a pull-out, the Iraq War, calling for a pull-out of troops. How would you handle these global threats, then, if it's not to send our troops there and make sure that we're protected?
Well, we create the threats. Why are we on the borders of Russia provoking the Russians? I mean, the Georgians initiated the military attack against these enclaves where they were mostly Russian. So it's sort of like the Russians being on the border of Mexico and then us, blaming ourselves. No, it's the fact that we're over there that we create these crises.
Isn't it part of our duty, though, to support these fledgling democracies that ask for our help, which is what Georgia did?
It is, after all, the Russians who have crossed an international border to attack Georgia, not the other way around.
Let me have you pause for a minute, because obviously there's a disagreement on that. Certainly in world press, there's a lot of disagreement on who did the invading first, but we'll not settle that here. But I think we should all agree that when you give humanitarian aid, it's essentially military aid, because all funds are fungible. And it just happens that the Georgians in their budget last year spent 70% of their money on the military, and they got a lot of assistance from us. So this idea that it's humanitarian aid and not military aid, I think distracts from what's really going on there. But I was just wondering whether it ever bothers you or concerns you, or the question ever crosses your mind about, say, humanitarian aid to a country like this. What about the people in this country? We have a lot of poor people not getting medical care and not getting food. And $1 billion, what the heck? We'll send them another $1 billion. Does it ever cross your mind that maybe that should be helping our people here? And this is getting us into trouble. This isn't helping us. This is making us less safe. This is part of this empire. You might refer to it as our sphere of influence, but everybody knows it's our empire. But does it ever cross your mind that everything that we do over there and every nickel you take, you're taking it away from some poor people in this country that could have been helped?
I don't think of it that way, no, sir. Secondly, as a matter of fact, Georgia did not attack Russia. There is no question about that. Russia attacked Georgia. Georgia sent in its forces into a part of Georgia the breakaway province of South Ossetia?
No, it's not our responsibility to do that. It's their responsibility. But we should endorse the principle, but not send troops and money. The principle of self-determination is a very good one. But once we get over there, we just aggravate the situation. What did we do? We did exactly the opposite in Yugoslavia. We bombed Serbia in order for Kosovo to become independent. We did exactly the opposite in Yugoslavia. We bombed Serbia in order for Kosovo to become independent. Now the Russians are doing the same thing, and then we're on the opposite side. It's this total inconsistency, absolute interference when we should not be there, and we don't have any money to do this, and we don't even have any troops, and we don't have any money to do this, and we don't even have any troops. If we really needed our troops to go into Georgia, we didn't even have them available, which proves my point that we are undermining our national defense with the foreign policy that we have.
I just want to ask you one quick thing. Are you going to be telling your supporters, and you had many of them, to back either one of these candidates?
Oh, well, I've endorsed neither one and will not endorse either of the two top candidates.
All right. Congressman Ron Paul, always great to talk to you. Thanks.
The strategic stakes here are fairly high. The administration believes it is in our interest to support Georgia, to help it get on its feet, to prevent Russia from drawing a new line in Europe and claiming a sphere of influence.
I understand your point, but let me tell you, there are a lot of people in America that do not see this in our interest. They see it in the interest of some very powerful special interest groups that have an oil pipeline going through there. Matter of fact, most Americans couldn't even find Georgia on a map, and to convince them that this is crucial to spend all this money provoking the Russians, leading us into another conflict that we're not even capable of handling militarily now unless we use some very big bombs. But our troops are spread around the world. And this has been exactly the plan of some of our enemies, to do exactly this and bring us to our knees. And all we do is proceed to continue to spend and spread our troops around, diminishing our ability to take care of our people here at home. And I yield back the balance of my time.